Hey guys, this is Mark, and on this video I'm going to go over a couple things that you will find on google.com when it comes to the company reviews, especially for PRA Health Sciences. This one is going to be for Salt Lake City, so if you Google that, you type that in, you look on reviews, you're going to see the exact same thing that I'm about to read to you, and the comments that I'm going to say about that, if it's true, if it's not true. It's mostly going to be catered towards the negative stuff because people have a higher chance, and I don't know what is, they have a higher chance to leave a comment or say something if they've had a bad experience compared to like if they haven't had a good one. I mean, I'm somewhat guilty of this too, and I will say I am guilty of this. That if I get a good experience, it's like I'm a happy camper and I go on my way. However, if it's negative, it used to be that way, but not anymore, where I would go out of my way to be a dick bag and say a thing or two about that. But as you progress through life, you'll find later on that a lot of these things that have happened is your fault, and it's hard for me to admit back then that when things are my fault, then they're my fault, and you're gonna have to like go back to a 30-degree point of view or something like that and say what really happened. Is it really my fault or is it really the other person's fault? And in most cases it's our own. Anyways, here goes. Really quick though, is I am not endorsed or I don't get any kind of kickbacks or anything like that when it comes to this video, so don't think I don't have any other affiliations besides being a test subject or a participant to that. Nothing else extra on top of that. The most recent one that I found was from Kendi Ruiz. Long story short, what she says is she got the COVID vaccine and wasn't told that she would be disqualified because she had the COVID vaccine. I don't know what the exact things are to these, but I would assume that if you've gotten the COVID vaccine, whether you had COVID or not, that would automatically disqualify you. I don't really understand why, because it would make you immune to it, but it's one of those things that'll probably be on my pay grade. And I mean, I don't know. It's kind of like a little bit of a left and right when it comes to that because it's in the early stages of the research and development. But the thing is that, okay, think about it this way. Anytime a new technology or something new has been released, per se, this hybrid car or like Teslas, they didn't last for very long until they got more and more improvements down the road, or even on the computer whenever a new operating system was just released. You don't really get that because they have a crap ton of bugs that people find, and it becomes very frustrating. So I don't know, it's a case by case scenario. Personally, I won't get it, and it's just in the early stages. It'll die out on its own. If I get it, so be it. I mean, like when it comes to the COVID virus, and let's say if it comes down to the occasion where I am forced by my work to have COVID, be like, I'm gonna go find me another job somewhere else. I mean, this is a free country. That's what it's all about. So really quick is I am not an anti-vax kind of person, but for these kinds of things, it's like more like what is actually necessary. You can debate on that. I mean, and go on forever. Doesn't really matter. Okay, next one. The next comment we'll be going over was from Sammy B. This was a month ago, so this was in December 2020. And the summary of it says that she was disqualified from the study that was due to the depression and anxiety that she's had about 6 years ago. And this was something that was new when I was in my study about like a week and a half ago. When it comes to a questionnaire of my mental health, they will ask you a couple of questions like if I've ever thought about suicide, if I ever tried to commit suicide and failed, and a list of other questions, which was something new that they did not have from last year. The following is going to be from Chris Esqueda, and what it says is that my study involved a week stay and 12 outpatient visits where you have to come back for follow-ups. That's actually one of the things that I'm doing right now. Is there's about 3 to 5 follow-ups, I think, for every single week after that I get discharged from the study, because the one I'm doing right now is 1 week on, 2 weeks off with several outpatient visits, and then back on for a week again and off. This was going about 3 times over the span of almost, I would say, 3 months. And whenever you're living in an area that's especially out-of-state people, or if you're traveling quite a bit of a distance, whether it's Provo or whether it's Logan, try to pick one of those things where it's consecutive days with little to no outpatient visits, because even on those days when you are working or not working, you have to make it to a point where it's typically, this is from my study, yours might be different, the screening window or the blood draw window that I have is plus or minus 2 hours from my dosage time, which is like 9 o'clock. So between 7 and 11 is going to be my window, and they try to accommodate you as best as they can while at the same time adhering to the guidelines that's made by the sponsor. And fuel and time will be out of your expense. However, whenever you're going through the debriefing process, whenever you're going through like what they tell you for the stipends and all that, for the study visits, depending on day 1, 6, 12, or whatever they have on that paper, refer to that, and whatever it says will be the stipend that you'll get based off of that outpatient visit. Now, this is going to be my first study that has multiple outpatient visits. There might be some that does not pay you, which is super unlikely, because anytime that you don't get stipend, you're typically not going to be back. And what they do is that they will hold some of the total for you to show up on that day and at that time. And the review that Chris says is that I would have preferred to get a compensation since I have to drive 45 minutes there and then back again from Provo. I live in Tooele, okay? Like, I'm not sure what you're bitching about, but I drive to get there, it's about 40 minutes. So we're only about a 5-minute difference. And in comparison to that is you agreed to the certain standards and certain kinds of agreements whenever you sign on that paper says that you're going to do that. And I think it's going to be a lack of what you would call personal responsibility, just accepting that those are the terms that you agreed to. So keep that in mind. Is again, shoot for the ones that have consecutive days with as little outpatient visits as possible. And in my case, is that it worked a whole lot better because the visits and the in-clinic studies would work for professionals where I can't be gone off of work for 3 weeks or more because they're going to fire my butt and find somebody else. This one worked out for me, so be sure you arrange with your work accordingly to make this happen. And in my case, it's the winter time, and the trucking industry, especially for the flatbed side, is significantly slower, and that's how I was able to pull this off. Another thing that Chris said, and I just want to include this on that, is when it comes to the blood draw. And what Chris says was, the nurses that draw blood were great except for one, so I requested not to be drawn blood from that person, which they understood. And he says he got infuriated by that, and I've had like a ton of their nurses or even the people that do their screening, draw blood from me several times, actually multiple times. I can't even count the way how many times that I've been drawn from the visits and the outpatient visits and the screening. It's been a lot, and I have not found one that was pretty incompetent or even close to that. They know what they're doing. Just have trust in them, just have patience, and they're probably going to be as nervous as you are, especially if you look like you're nervous or if you look like you're not very friendly. It's not going to help your situation at all. And I did get asked this. This was more of a joke. So my follow-up lady, she asked me if they can have their new recruit draw blood from me. And I was all excited, and I was like, heck yeah, bring it on. I'll be happy to be your first blood draw. And turns out it was more or less like a joke, because apparently their new hire, even though they've done some phlebotomy is blood draw from other places before in their experience, they cannot draw blood from PRA patients until they've done what you would call a manager blood draw or some higher up blood draw to make sure that they're qualified, that they know what they're doing, so that way they can have their screeners or their patients be okay. So that was something that was neat, something I didn't know of. I mean, either way, stab me multiple times to be like, bring it on, it's okay. The last comment from Chris, he says that they don't deserve a 5 or a 4-star with my schedule conflicts I had to discuss with them and their referral program, blah blah blah. And when it comes to scheduling conflict, is before I got admitted to the study, they gave me a list of all the days that I need to be there for my outpatient visits and my in-clinic stays. And I made sure that all those days work with my employer before I even said yes. I mean, I just said yes anyway and made it work with my work afterwards. But the point is, every single day that you need to be there. And I understand this is going to be more like a part-time or a recreational thing that you're going to do for extra money. You're going to have to treat this as if it's one of your jobs or a contract and they're the customer, because you have to fulfill your side of the contract, and they will again try to accommodate you with your scheduling best as possible. I mean, there has been a few occasions where I was a little bit late, but nothing excessive, and it's really not a fuss. One of the things that I do resonate with when it comes to just me's comment is when it comes to visiting the facility. And it has to do, from last year, I've done at least 3 or 4 different kinds of in-person screening, and they didn't really work out because they say, don't work out like 2 weeks before, or do you take grapefruit juice and a couple other things? I'm like, dude, those are parts of my diet and parts of my daily habits. I'm like, it was hard not to go to the gym and not drink my grapefruit and a couple other stuff, or supplements or creatine. And all those things were 100% my fault. I didn't adhere to the guidelines, so they found things in my blood that was way off the charts or off the spectrum of what they're looking into, and I got disqualified. And you know what? For those 2 hours worth that I was not at work, and that's happened again multiple times, it was out of my own expense, and PRA does not reimburse you or pay you for that because, well, they want to make sure that you qualify first. That's what the whole point of screening. I mean, just like when it comes to dating, is you're not gonna say yes to every single dude or girl that you go out with. You gotta screen them out and see who's psychotic and who's not. I mean, that needs no explaining. And you don't pay them to say he's psychotic or how often do you stalk. No, they're not gonna do that. It's out of your own expense. The next one is going to be from Ashley Machado, and what she says is that while the recruiter is very kind and helpful, I find it a bit ridiculous that they do not allow any dietary variants. They don't allow vegetarian, vegan, or non-pork options, even if it's due to your religion. And you can read the rest of them on Google, and honestly, there are some occasions and some days where they feed nothing, not necessarily some days, maybe like for a lunch hour or one of those times where, a slice of a pickle, or especially freaking salads, man. Oh, those times, do not feed me what you feed the freaking cows. But you know what? It's what's on there, and food is provided for you as you're going through the stay on there from breakfast all the way to dinner. And sometimes I would just not eat that thing at all because it's nothing but salads. Like, especially those times I'm like, looks like we'll be starving for like the next 3 or 4 hours, which is not a big deal, You're getting provided with food, and whatever they provide you usually has to do with what the sponsor says, so that way they can keep your body or your nutrient parameters to a certain section. And when it comes to like the whole vegan thing and non-pork or religious kind of stuff, as I said before, this is their game, so you have to abide by their rules. It's kind of like the exact same thing where we're saying you're gonna smoke in a non-smoking facility and you choose to work there. That is your problem. And I guess for the short little bit, no matter how the whole dietary thing is you're gonna have to play with it and you're gonna have to abide by that. And the next one is gonna be by Ari Suno from about 4 weeks ago, so this would be in December 2020. And she says this place should be closed for good. They'll waste your time. They're bad payers, plus won't pay you for your referrals. And this is very, very strict when it comes to the referrals. Is be sure that on your screen day, either on the phone and or like whenever you're in person, it says on that thing in the reception area is you must write down the referral or the referring person or they will not get paid. So it does not exactly say how you did this, but they're very, very strict when it comes to that because they can say, oh, by the way, this person referred me after you get admitted and you want them to get paid for it. That's not the way that it works, especially in the workplace. Is if you say the referring person's name after you get admitted in the job, it's a no can do because that thing can be twisted. And when it comes to the bad payers, the only experience that I've had on that was mine was extended because my AE or adverse events was when I was feeling something during from my last study on February of last year, and it wasn't closed out all the way because there were some things that still need to be completed, and so mine took about 2-3 weeks longer, which is not a big deal. This is the whole point of why you're still employed unless you're doing this thing. Unless you're strapped for cash, then yeah, you're going to be way stressed. But I have not had a problem when it comes to the whole stipend. And they did say that they have up to 30 days from your discharge or your final visit that they have that much time before they can pay you. And honestly, they do pay so much sooner than that, but they do have some occasions where sometimes it does take a little bit longer than usual. Be patient, so don't even call because they'll say, has it been 30 days? Nope. Okay, well, you're gonna have to wait. Just the way it is. So I hope from all the things that I mentioned, from the reviews that I've read on there, that you have a little bit more of an idea when it comes to what to expect. And just because it's a lot of these things that you'll find on Google does not always mean that it's accurate. A lot of times, I mean, especially for the last couple months or so, there's a lot of angry people. And really, how they view the world is what they'll reflect to everyone else. And if there's something that you're just not sure about, if it's accurate or not, I try to address as much of these things as possible, especially the most recent ones. And you're more than welcome to ask away. I do respond typically within 24 hours. Sometimes I do take a little bit longer because I'm working or I'm working on a project. But overall, it's something that I would recommend 100%. And I would actually give this a 5 out of 5. Again, really quick is I've received no kinds of endorsements or stipends or anything like that that would make me want to make this video. It's more the things that people should know because they're either thinking about it or they read so many negative things online. They're like, I'm not even sure if this is even a good company to work with. Competent people they are. It's a great clinic. It's clean. The procedures are pretty well put in place. And I would honestly do this for a full-time job if I could. Except for the blood draws, man. But other than that is I hope you enjoyed this video, and as always, thank you for watching. See ya.